On a cold January night in Mississauga, Canada, a tragic call reaches the police. Sandra, a 16-year-old girl, reports her mother, Linda Andersen, has tragically drowned in the bathtub. When officers arrive, they find Linda's lifeless body, and the scene looks like a heartbreaking accident. Sandra and her 15-year-old sister Beth tell police they were out with friends when the accident happened. They say Linda had been drinking and went to take a bath, and by the time they returned, it was too late. The community mourned with Sandra and Beth, two young girls left without their mother. The local news portrayed Linda's death as a tragic accident, with Linda's alcoholism hinted as a contributing factor. Linda, a single mother of three, had struggled with her alcohol addiction for years. She worked multiple jobs to support her family, yet the burden and loneliness often drove her to drink. The community was sympathetic, feeling that the tragic loss was perhaps inevitable given Linda's challenges. Months later, the case seemed almost forgotten until a startling tip reached the police. Charlie, a friend of Sandra and Beth, came forward with a chilling confession. He claimed that Linda's death was no accident, but a planned murder orchestrated by her own daughters. Charlie reported that Sandra had confided in him, explaining how they had carefully staged the accident to claim their mother's insurance money. The shocking news shook the officers, and they reopened the case immediately. Police decided to investigate quietly, hoping to gather concrete evidence. They enlisted Charlie to record his conversations with Sandra and Beth. The plan was risky, but if successful, it could expose the sisters' dark intentions. For weeks, Charlie met with the girls, subtly steering conversations to the night of Linda's death. Gradually, Sandra and Beth began to boast about their plan, feeling untouchable after deceiving the police and securing the insurance payout. Little did they know that every word was being recorded as evidence. The recordings painted a chilling picture. Sandra and Beth, frustrated by their mother's alcoholism and financial struggles, had plotted to end her life for a better future. They had even detailed how they researched drowning methods and the effects of alcohol mixed with drugs. When questioned by friends, they had laughed off the dangers, focused on the freedom and wealth they would gain. The chilling evidence began to pile up, making it clear to investigators that Linda's death was far from an accident. The police obtained more evidence from Sandra and Beth's online activity. Internet searches revealed disturbing inquiries about drowning, overdose methods, and insurance policies. Investigators found messages between the sisters and friends discussing ways to get rid of their mother, with some friends even suggesting potential tactics. The sisters' shocking sense of entitlement and excitement about the impending payout was evident in every message. Each piece of digital evidence strengthened the case, painting a picture of calculated and chilling motives. With concrete evidence in hand, police decided it was time to confront Sandra and Beth. They called the sisters in for questioning, separating them to gauge their reactions. Initially, both sisters denied any involvement, claiming they were at a restaurant with friends when their mother died. However, as police began revealing their recorded conversations and online searches, the sisters' confidence wavered. The calm demeanor they had displayed in their messages began to crack as they realized the gravity of their situation. Sandra was the first to break under pressure. She confessed that she and Beth had indeed planned their mother's death, hoping to escape a life of poverty and frustration. She admitted to their scheme, explaining how they had waited until Linda was intoxicated before adding painkillers to her drink. Then they led her to the bathtub, where the tragedy unfolded. Sandra's voice trembled as she revealed the grim details, knowing the consequences of her actions were now inevitable. Beth followed her sister's confession soon after. She described how they meticulously planned every detail, believing that no one would suspect two young girls of such a heinous act. She admitted that they saw their mother as an obstacle, someone standing in the way of a better life. Beth's confession painted a disturbing image of two daughters who, driven by resentment and greed, chose to betray the woman who had raised them alone. The weight of her actions seemed to settle over Beth as she finished her confession. In court, the details of the murder and the sisters' motives shocked everyone. Prosecutors presented the recordings, search histories, and text messages, painting a vivid picture of two young women who had lost all sense of empathy for their mother. As evidence was presented, the courtroom was silent, with everyone realizing the gravity of the sisters' betrayal. The prosecution argued that their desire for financial freedom had outweighed any familial love, a devastating realization that left many in disbelief. The defense argued that Sandra and Beth's childhood was filled with hardship. They recounted how Linda's alcoholism had damaged the family, leaving the sisters to grow up in an unstable and abusive environment. Linda's relationship with her abusive boyfriend had scarred the girls deeply, and her reliance on alcohol had left them feeling neglected. The defense claimed that the sisters' resentment grew over the years, leading them down a dark path where they saw their mother not as a caretaker, but as an obstacle to a better life. The prosecution, however, countered by emphasizing the cold, calculated nature of the sisters' actions. They pointed to the extensive research Sandra and Beth had conducted, from studying insurance policies to finding ways to stage a drowning without leaving evidence. The messages between the sisters and their friends showed a complete lack of remorse, even expressing excitement at the thought of receiving the insurance money. The prosecutors insisted that this was not an impulsive act, but a deliberate plan to end Linda's life purely for financial gain. As Sandra and Beth sat silently in the courtroom, their friends and former classmates testified about the sisters' behavior before and after Linda's death. Witnesses described how the girls bragged about their mother's death, making light of the tragedy, while eagerly discussing their plans to travel and enjoy their newfound wealth. These testimonies left the courtroom stunned. For many, it was difficult to comprehend how two young girls could act with such cold-hearted detachment toward their own mother. With each piece of evidence and witness testimony, the picture of Sandra and Beth's betrayal grew clearer. Prosecutors presented forensic evidence confirming that Linda had consumed a dangerous combination of alcohol and painkillers, leading to her weakened state before being submerged in the bathtub. The forensic analysis also showed that Linda would not have been able to resist due to her intoxicated state, making it evident that the sisters had manipulated the situation to ensure their plan's success. After weeks of intense testimony and evidence presentation, the trial reached its final stage. The jury, visibly moved by the grim details, listened as both sides made their closing arguments. The prosecution argued that Sandra and Beth's calculated, emotionless actions showed they were fully aware of the consequences of their choices. The defense, however, pleaded for leniency, citing their difficult upbringing. The courtroom was tense as everyone awaited the verdict, wondering what fate awaited the two young women. The verdict was finally announced. Both Sandra and Beth were found guilty of first-degree murder. Due to their ages at the time of the crime, however, they received sentences as juvenile offenders, which limited their prison time to a maximum of 10 years. The outcome left many people outraged, feeling that the sentence was too lenient for such a brutal crime. However, the law protected them as minors, leaving the court with no choice but to abide by juvenile sentencing guidelines. As Sandra and Beth served their sentences, their identities were shielded from the public due to Canadian laws on juvenile offenders. However, their case became infamous, sparking debates across Canada about whether sentencing laws for juvenile offenders should be more severe in cases of violent crime. News outlets and the public alike were captivated by the chilling details, and the case became a somber reminder of the darker side of human nature. The sisters' betrayal continued to haunt the nation long after the trial ended. Years later, Sandra and Beth were released, but the stigma of their actions followed them. Attempting to rebuild their lives, they sought ways to move past the tragedy they had created. Some reports claim Sandra pursued higher education, while Beth reportedly became a lawyer. Their story, however, remained a cautionary tale for many, symbolizing how unchecked resentment and greed can lead to destruction. For the community, Linda Andersen's memory served as a reminder of the need for compassion and support for those in difficult circumstances. The case of Sandra and Beth continues to be studied and discussed. It has been the subject of books, documentaries, and even a film adaptation, each exploring the psychological and social factors that could drive two young girls to such a dark place. Experts have examined their troubled upbringing, family dynamics, and the impact of isolation. Their story remains a complex puzzle, leaving many to wonder if things could have turned out differently with more support and intervention. In the end, the story of Sandra and Beth Andersen serves as both a warning and a tragedy. A case marked by betrayal, greed, and lost innocence, it reveals the depths to which human nature can sink. As the years pass, people still remember Linda Andersen, a mother who fought to raise her children despite life's hardships, only to face a tragic end at their hands. Her memory lives on as a haunting reminder of the need for understanding and compassion in the face of despair. Shadow Mysteries, unraveling the horrifying mysteries of crime cases. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to catch the next thrilling and suspenseful episodes.